Intro video for tract 25 at Panther Hollow. Big tract. It does have direct frontage on Bryant Creek along its north side, direct frontage on the easement road on its south or southwest side. This blue line you see is kind of a little seasonal creek bed that crosses over the property. The day we were out there, well, I guess we didn't walk down to the creek bed on the property, so we couldn't really tell if it was flowing. We walked. Zoom out just a little bit. We walked down to the creek bed on track 27 and it was flowing there. So I mean, that's all we know about that. It's certainly not a year-round creek bed because we have been down there when the creek bed wasn't flowing. So now Bryant Creek, you know, even though we don't call anything year-round, that's kind of a different story, and that borders the north part of the property. By the way, we're using the MapRight interactive map. It's made to be somewhat close but not exact, especially around rivers and creeks. So Bryant Creek is the actual northern boundary on this section of the property. So I know it's kind of showing Bryant Creek in two spots and blah blah blah, but these tracks are being surveyed right now, and I believe it's going to be the center line of Bryant Creek, which will be this northern boundary of the property, just so you know. Okay, property itself. These orange lines. Okay, so when we were out here fairly recently, we just drove around, we kind of goofed off all day, checked out some different stuff, and on our version of MapRight, which is the paid version, we can turn on the tracking feature, and that'll track everywhere that you go. So when we got there in the morning, we turned on the tracking, goofed off essentially all day, and then at the end of the day, it gave us this map which showed right where we went. So it's pretty cool. So on track 25, we pulled in off the easement road. We kind of drove around. We kind of drove by the woods here, and then down toward the little seasonal creek bed area, and then came back to the easement road. So that's what the orange line is. Also on track 25, we didn't drive up there that day, but we have driven up there. First of all, let's do a topo map. So before we switch to a topo, okay, so from the easement road, as you go northeasterly, it slopes down fairly gently in that meadow area. You get to the timber, it continues to slope down. Lowest point, or the lowest section on the south half for sure, is this little seasonal creek bed. You cross over that and it rises back up. You get to about the middle and you actually have a big wide, essentially a big wide ridge, big flat wide ridge. As you go northeast from there, you've got some type of drop, like it gets steep, going down toward this lower meadow, and then the lower meadow all the way to the creek is essentially flat, maybe sloped a little bit, but so you've got the big wide ridge in the center. As you go northeast toward the lower meadow, keep in mind you do have that drop, and it is actually a drop. I mean, you would never ever want to go over that in a vehicle or a side-by-side or anything unless you were to somehow create a trail first, but it's steep, so do watch for that when you're out there. Okay, now we can go to the topo map. Okay, that's the vintage topo, they call it. The dashed line is the overhead power line. So this is showing us kind of what we knew already from the south side. It's showing it's level here on the south side. I'd say it's actually a little bit of a slope down as you go toward the timber. You can see the seasonal creek bed and then rising up, and then here's that big level ridge toward the middle of the property. Going northeast from there, especially this section, see how close those lines are. At least part of that, at least some part of that by the power lines is basically a bluff or a drop. So you know, be aware of that. And then the whole south side virtually level down to the creek area. So as far as building sites, I mean, you've got more than enough meadow that you could get off the meadow, be outside of any easements, and still have a place to park or camp or potentially build a home or cabin. But man, if you wanted an awesome site coming up here to the ridge and getting into the timber, you could basically have almost any size home or cabin or place to park your camper and have as much level area as you want, because there is a big level area up there. Let's go back to the satellite. Oops. Okay. So yeah, I mean, this whole level area in here could be ideal if you wanted a big yard. And not everybody needs a big yard. Some people just need a small level space or no level space, depending on what your plans are. But in this case, you could have a really good size level area. Maybe clear out some of the smaller or mid-sized trees and have some maximum privacy in there. As far as the creek frontage, it's super cool to have direct frontage on Bryant Creek. I mean, that's just practically unheard of. So that's really cool. You'd have to, I mean, if you wanted to be able to drive a vehicle down to this lower meadow, you would have to do some kind of work, because it, like we said, it's steep from where this drops to the meadow area. That's just really steep. So that's something you want to be aware of. A walking trail, yeah, might not be that big a deal, but to drive a vehicle or a side-by-side, you'd have to do some major work to that hillside to do that. Meanwhile, though, up here, you're going to have some excellent views. You're very, very private, but you're not that far off the easement road. You're obviously close to power and phone, which is great. Oh, this is the property. Actually, come to think of it, we found a video the other day where one of the guys was down here checking out the little creek bed and actually found an old rock wall, like a long stacked stoned rock wall about where this little cursor is on the property. And that's generally when the homesteaders would clear for pasture. They didn't have machinery to cart the rocks, off to some rock pile a quarter mile away, so they would stack them up on the edge of the pasture and generally create a wall, because then they had a usable wall, to keep animals in or whatnot, and they were removing the rocks. So in this case, the pasture probably extended right down here almost to the seasonal creek bed. And if we go to the vintage topo map, so these vintage topo maps, what we've been told, are based on data from the earlier 1900s, maybe as late as the 1950s. And when they were created, the greenish areas indicate wooded areas or tree cover areas, and the white areas indicate pasture or meadow. And this actually does show that whenever this map was created, it was pasture or meadow almost down to that seasonal creek bed. And then keep your eye on this area, and we'll switch it back to the satellite map. Whoop. And you can see that at some point, someone let this kind of get natural and grow back up into timber, but that rock wall is remaining as the old edge of the pasture. So that's pretty cool. A little bit of history on the property. So gorgeous tract, super private. Just kind of checking some stuff out here. So if we back up a little bit, just really quickly, we'll show you where this is within Panther Hollow. So on the left here, we have the county road, which is Panther Hollow Road. The main entrance into Panther Hollow is between tracks 1 and 2. That's where the easement road begins. So take that in. It kind of curves and heads to the east. Stay on that, keep on trucking. You'll go down a little hillside. You'll get into the open meadow area. And basically, once you start seeing the buildings from the old original farm on the right, that means you're getting close to the property on the left. So super unique tract. Power and phone, like we said, are nearby. The Bryant Creek frontage is really, really cool. The little seasonal creek is interesting. The rock wall provides a little bit of historical context, which is cool as well. And then if you want a tract with a big level site, you do have that big wide ridge area up here. And most properties in this area in the Ozarks aren't going to have that big level area that this tract has. So that's really interesting to see. So tract 25 at Panther Hollow. If you have any questions, send us an email, give us a call. We would love to chat with you.